My name's Simon Schless. I don't know how many of you know me. I'm a physiotherapist by my profession. I worked in Aline Hospital in Jerusalem. For those who know it, it's a pediatric rehabilitation center. And I now this year joined the senior faculty in the Department of Physiotherapy in Tel Aviv University. I have my own questions, but I thought I'd open it to the floor first. If there are any questions for any of the speakers, or maybe something for all the speakers together, feel free to ask or lift up your hand. Or pleasure.
So you talked a lot about what can and can't be learned for rehabilitation from motor learning. I'm not sure I know what the bottom line is, but it seemed like it was hard to learn anything from motor learning for rehabilitation. What about going the other way? Like, having gone through the literature on motor learning pretty extensively with the perspective of somebody who does rehabilitation, what do you think we need to learn from you, from your practice, from your experience, from your theories?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. First, the question is learning about what, like about the changes most of the neurological system can go through, or if we look into neuroplasticity or learning about behavior, or like we can look at very different ways.
What do you wish the motor learning field was doing that it's not doing?
So I think first, I think the ability to learn is limited by the kind of paradigm that we are using. So I think we need to implement in research more ecological, real world, complex activities. And this is because we see that, for example, for contextual interference, we can see differences in results when we look at the results of studies that implemented very simple tasks or adaptation tasks, when compared to when we look at sports activities or new gaining or acquisition of new coordination. So I think this is something that we need to go and try. And the other thing is to look more into clinical populations. So we have limited information from clinical populations. And clinical, I'm not meaning like stroke. Okay, stroke, but there are so many subgroups within the stroke population. So cerebellum is learned a lot in terms of adaptation tasks, but what about so many other subgroups within this thing? And the other thing that is for me very interesting just to say is if repetition, if you have enough repetition, if anything else is matter. So I think this is a very serious question, because if enough repetitions are enough, then why studying all the others?
I think there is big work by Catherine Lang.
Yeah.
A few years ago, they have studied something like 9,000 repetitions overall, which was like 300 repetitions a session about 1 hour. And they found out that there was no difference between low, like relatively, there was several intensities. I think I can recall it's going 4,080 and the 9,600 something. There was no difference whatsoever. But another group, and John Crocker is pointing out it, found that other very large repetitions protocol, which was higher intensity, but maybe was a little bit more meaningful, or not, was less dumb. That's what I understand. It was less dumber, more smart repetition on something which was more complex, and was added to it was pre-treatment with massage, and according to neurophysiological principles of Bobat and Brunstone and all these guys, all these ladies, and they found out that this was actually beneficial in a severe stroke. In the chronic phase, I think there's nine points in Kugelmeyer that they increased because it's a lot. In a chronic stage stroke in severe patients, usually don't see any. If you see any changes, neglectable or even for the a decrement of the function. But this group found an advantage for it. So I feel that you should go both ways. Like there are the simple tasks, the simplistic tasks even, which are important because they can let us dismantle this very complex process, which has a lot of factors, hundreds of factors. It's either explicit versus implicit, the repetition, the dosage, and spacing, and the reward. What kind of reward, and do you conceptualize it, and do you verbalize it, and what's the timing, and the population itself is so heterogeneous. So you have to anchor yourself to something. You use simplistic paradigm, and with pre-selected patients, well-selected patients which are, let's say, you try that they will be similar to each other in terms of the time after stroke and the phenotype, and you use a simplistic paradigm for healthy people, age-matched controls, and these patients, and you may learn something, and then after you learn something, you can try and put another complexity. But eventually, if we go straight to complex behavior, which are more like teaching people sports or martial arts or something in this style, some things will succeed and we won't be able to reproduce it because we won't be able to understand what was successful and what was not. And many others, and the worst thing, many others will fail, and we will have to throw the baby in the water because we won't be able to understand is everything in the basket was wrong, or maybe there was some active ingredient, which was negatively affecting all the others and spoiled our experiment. So I think that it's going both ways. Here there is we are a synergy translate group. So our main focus is about translation. So I think in translation there are many efforts. One of the efforts is to create the knowledge. Another effort is to make it more accessible. Is to make it it's to make it process it to clinical trials, and then after you go into clinical trials or feasibility studies, you can go and translate it to clinical therapists and to purify it so they can and submerge it in protocols. Something like that was done in Levinstein Hospital. They took the CAMT that was published, I think, on the 80s, and they use it routinely in the departments. It was very thoughtful to do this. It took them about 2 years to reach a good, like a reasonable practice of really doing CIMT, not just saying I'm doing CIMT, but it really doesn't fit the patient. The patient doesn't like it, so I drop it. So they're really doing CIMT. It takes them so long to get it into clinical practice. So this is an effort in one end, but here we are talking about also effort on the other end of the basic science, and we should be aware of all very intelligent and smart things that been said in this day, to try to process it more We need more sessions and um, more progress in this, focusing more in another, more forums. It's not the end of the line.
Issue by learning by Nikolai say that the definition, that the repetition without repetition.
Sorry, I didn't.
Repetition without repetition. That is the learning. What the learning is that we come forward.
Purposeful repetition for task oriented. I don't get the question. What is the question?
About the question about how many repetition needs to promote and learning, right? No repetition. Only each repetition without repetition.
Each one as new. Each
each
one
one. The notebook.
is a real learning experience. So none of them are actual repetitions of what from before, but we are continually in a new place, doing a new thing.
But I think,
Philosophical about.
yeah, but I think that even when we refer to the neurological population, to stroke and TBI, the question if we can achieve repetitions without repetitions, because this idea of repetition without repetition comes from the perspective of redundancy in movement. So that someone can achieve situ stands in many different kinematic strategies. And in stroke, for example, when we have so many constraints on the movements, like impairments, actual impairments in movement, do we achieve, when we have a lot of repetition, do we achieve really repetitions without repetitions? So this is something I think for us, remember that when the movement patterns are stereotypic, and there are many constraints on the movement, just having many repetitions, it's not repetitions without repetitions. We need to enforce some other outside constraints that enforce the person to adapt new coordinations. Because in like when we take a healthy population, we see when we repeat the same movement over and over again, we see deep variability in the kinematics. But maybe for people with TBI or stroke, the redundancy in the movement system is lower. Maybe we don't achieve what we think we achieve. So this is something to consider in this context.
I have a question to all the speakers. Whoever wants to answer first, we go ahead. It may be a silly question, but individuals post-stroke basically go through a brain lesion of a certain size, of a certain location that influences various aspects of their function. And the concept of motor learning that's been addressed today is that let's improve something that's challenging for them to do. But could it be that that's maybe not entirely the right way to look at it? Because we know that when an individual with stroke arrives in their chronic stage, except for the study I just mentioned, that there was actually an ability to improve, they have some sort of capacity that actually is not possible to improve due to the injury that they underwent. And therefore, it may be not correct to try and achieve something that might not be possible. Is that something that could be the case? It sounds a bit of a negative spin to put on what we're discussing, but I just take this from the world of children with cerebral palsy. For example, from this, we have to improve, it's now becoming more and more accepted that actually we can't create new spinal tracts or modify things that were due to the initial brain lesion, and therefore function and a daily quality of life is actually more important than trying to improve the ability to isolate a finger movement for the purpose of what that might bring. Could it be that there's some evidence or some truth to this also in the population post-stroke, or it's something different entirely?
According to classical rehabilitation view, you want to work on all the chain, all the stations on the chain of the function. Like if the child is okay with not using his hand because he's and his participation is like what he wants and what the family wants, and everybody happy. Don't need to change it. But if the child is not happy with that because he's not moving his hand, and you can cause him by some magic, motor learning magic, to move his hand, and now he can play PlayStation or baseball or contact, be more like participate more with his fellows, make him happier, more fruitful in his life, then then you should we want to be able to be able to provide this kind of treatment, and if someone doesn't want it, it's okay. We don't doesn't have to get it. But if someone does want it, and there are many people that do want, many patients do want to get better. If there was a magic pill that we take and the hand will walk better, they will take it or whatever it's called. The problem here is that we don't have it right now. We are searching for it. We don't know if it exists, but maybe we shouldn't stop trying at this stage. I think there are some clues in the literature that there is something beneath that we might be like missing, but not exactly missing, but it's out there. The truth is out there. We should search for it and never stop searching.
I'm not a physical therapist, but I know a number of people who had strokes, who had doctors or physical therapists tell them that there was a limit to how much they could improve, and they didn't accept that, and they worked very hard and they improved further than, and so I think, this goes back to whoever, which is gone now, talk about this sort of case-by-case basis, where you, as therapists, I imagine it's sort of this crazy balance between providing the support somebody needs to improve as much as they can, and yet not pushing them in ways that make them miserable or frustrated. And I just can't imagine how hard that is.
Yeah, I think in a lot of the studies that we also run in the lab, we usually just treat people as being part of a large group. We don't look very much into individual differences. So we see that we know when we look at the graphs, we see some people learn a lot and some people learn a little bit. And we usually have no idea why some people learn more and some people. It was one of the questions I think I put up there in the slides is about the individual differences, and I think something that requires collecting lots of data and maybe doing online experiments where you can get hundreds of thousands of participants and trying to understand. I think if we understood better in healthy populations why some people learn more and other people learn less, maybe help us guide. Probably we should give people different strategies for learning.
I think if I would parallel the motor control field to the perceptual system, like the visual system, we're in the pre-Hugel and Wiesel era. We still don't know what are the principles, what are the dimensions that we should look for. Maybe there's a common theme that we can find behaviorally in patients that will give us some clue as to what we should be doing.
Brunstrom has described these patterns so long time ago, but unfortunately, I don't think it gave us enough information that we can really progress on the basis of this information. We see the patients when there's some intuition that we cannot describe about the patients. That the clinician, we are as clinicians sense the behavior of the patient. It's not really, it's not always visible for people who are not treating patients from day to day. So there is something there that the patients are. We see there some patients recover, but every patient recovers differently. And I think there are many kinds of recovery. That's why it's so hard to in the modern scientific world you need randomized controlled trial and you need a group. But every person is a group by himself almost. Every patient is so singular. So our current means, our current technology doesn't allow us to progress as much as we want. And this is one of the problems. You can maybe try to overcome this obstacle, find some technology or maybe a wise idea, I don't know. It may make better practice.
The strategy is to look for group effects, but obviously it's not working. And it doesn't look, and so we need to look for the individual effects, but for that you need to know what are the principles.
I heard, Jason, what you provided the definition given by John Cracker about what motor learning is, which is experience-dependent improvement in the performance of the task. I disagree completely with this definition because all tasks, all human tasks, including even most basic like respiration or swallowing or digestion, involve some kind of motor activity. There are muscles that are involved in this. And tasks usually are behavioral. For example, if you think about Barcelona football team, they didn't do much well last year. They changed the coach. You know, Xavi was displaced by another German coach, and now they are doing better. Is this the result of motor learning? Of course not. So if you take tasks like very discrete tasks of moving from one point to another, then motor learning theories apply. We have tried this kind of thinking coming from Anatol Feldman, for example. Anatol Feldman actually is writing about motor control, and he has a theory that actually, if you want to execute a movement, you have to change the parameters of the activation by gamma motor neurons of the intrafusal muscles within muscle spindles in a muscle. So this is the way that contraction will be executed. And the idea of Anatol Feldman was that if you want to train a stroke patient in just a simple task like reaching movement. Usually in physiotherapy, reaching movement, you don't limit to be this thing. But according to better to do the training only in the spasticity-free range. You know, when you do a reach, the spasticity coming from the biceps is not starting in the beginning of the trajectory. It's starting sometime during the trajectory, and this is rate dependent. Quickly, it will start here, do it more slowly, it will start here, and then you can check and provide what's called the TSRT, it's measurable. What is the level of spasticity? And if you execute the training within the spasticity range, according to motor control, you'll get a better result. And what was the result? It was a pre-national study, multi-center, many patients. Results are close to nothing.
Mixed.
And actually, if you want to read this published years ago in scientific reviews. But anyway, there is a very big gap. I think you found it is coming from people like Mark Latache and Feldman about how of and the general idea how what to do, these changes. So, for example, the better results of Barcelona team this year compared to last year, after they changed the coach, has nothing to do with the motor learning. It has something to do with many other factors.
See the potential. Maybe.
This is something that we should and it's just taking from theories of motor control and science.
I think on this note, we're going to bring a close to the session, but thank you everyone who stayed for your attention, and thank you to all the speakers as well for very interesting work.